There is, if I must be honest, there is a seersucker romper that is really quite fly to me right now. I'm always partial to a seersucker style. So that's really working. They have a G. Wait a minute, hold on. But see, what you're doing right now is you are bringing me hashtag Black Boy Joy, because my summer fashion choices are about to get lit. They got a jean, and it says a stylish men's short sleeves, shirts, pants, romper, one-piece shorts, jumpsuit playsuit, and it's only $17.85. I'm not going to, and look, it comes from one of my favorite places. It's made in China, so it's got to be good, right?
Is it really? That's what you're thinking. Okay. So now that we're on the page about what rompers are, okay? Are we all together now?
Sorry to everyone for the romper digression. Sorry for those who already knew and were like, could he just please get it together? He know what a romper is. He probably got a romper on right now.
Right.
I wish I did.
So what happened was, if you do a Google image, you see a Google image search, you see a whole bunch of white men in the more like quote unquote elevated fashion spreads for wearing these things, right? So what happened was there was this display of black men wearing them, and it started this whole conversation around like, dude, what are you doing? Right? Like, you as a man, you can't be running around wearing a romper. I think it's not only just the construction of the clothes, but that they tend to come in like prints, right? And so for some reason, like, certain prints are not perceived to be masculine. So to see like a grown black man walking around in a printed romper felt like this ridiculous sort of thing. And so it was this whole like controversy, maybe too strong of a word, but you get what I'm saying, right? Around like, can black men still be men and masculine? And I think the question in specific that nobody was coming straight out and asking was, can heterosexual black men still be masculine and wear rompers?
And that's actually going to bring me to the next question I have for you. And I think this is important when looking at the terminology of Black Boy Joy, emphasis on boy there, and the understanding of, because we sort of gently went into the definition of masculinity as opposed to one's sexual orientation and sexual identity. So let me ask this. Why is masculinity so important to black men? That's part one. And I know the answer to the question, but I just want you to sort of break it down and explain it for everyone who's listening. The part two of that is, why do we fixate on the external so much when it comes down to this black masculinity and not the internal? So we're having a conversation about, okay, if you wear this jumper, you're not a real black man. And, would you as a black woman date a black man who wore a jumper? But I don't hear a lot of questions about, if you're not taking and paying your child support or taking care of your baby or standing by your baby's moms, what are you there? So why is that? What's going on there?
Okay, what's the question again? You lost me. I'll be real honest and say, I got confused. What do you want to know about black masculinity? What's the
first question? Break down black masculinity for people so they understand why it's so important to be masculine as a black man, especially in America, but worldwide also. And two, why do we focus on the external as a definition for that black masculinity instead of the internal? Okay.
So the first part, my perspective on why black masculinity is such an important concept has to let's start with a basic conversation around intersectionality. Big word, but simple idea. And that's this idea that we represent multiple identities in one individual, and that it is too simplistic and problematic for us to think about any one part of one's identity in isolation. So we'll take this idea of Black men and Black masculinity as an example of intersectionality. So when you say Black men, you're already talking about two different identities, right? And one is a gender, and then the other is race. So Blackness has concept and meaning. It represents a specific social identity for folks, a specific social status around race and racial hierarchy in our society. And then you have another layer or component that is manhood or masculinity, which is an expression of gender. And then, so we put those two things together and say that they intersect to create something new, right? So part of what makes Black masculinity complicated is that masculinity in the U.S. is so problematic to begin with because it represents a system of sexism. The only reason why masculinity has meaning and has significance is because it is a counterpart to femininity. And what we've done in this good old country of ours with systemic structures is equate power and dominance with masculinity and equate lack of power and submissiveness with femininity. And so once you have a system that allows you, or I shouldn't say allows you, but forces people to be one or the other, it automatically puts people in a position of having to restrict parts of themselves. So if you are a Black man, you have another added layer of race on top of that. And there are all of these stereotypes and limitations and margins and boundaries around what Blackness means, and it's specific around what Black masculinity means. And that is the piece that we've been talking about so far earlier today in terms of it being restricted, in terms of it being limited, because we tend to want to have it be such a stereotype, be reduced down to such simplistic terms in that kind of either or dichotomy. And so Black men haven't really been allowed to have expressions of their masculinity be seen as normal or valid or appropriate or acceptable if they are outside of that very restrictive boundary of being hard, being a kind of being strong, being stoic, not having a whole lot of emotional reactions, not being able to be joyful around things, around having to always be held accountable and be responsible for everything, to have power and strength and dominance. There hasn't been a whole lot of conversation or representation of masculinity outside of that very limited framework for Black men. What that also means is that there are some psychological consequences that come with that, because that's not reflective of the real lived experience. Everybody that's human experiences hurt and pain. Everybody that's human experiences laughter and joy. And so to try to put a whole group of people in a box is problematic, and creates a lot of psychological dissonance and a lot of internalized, I think, depression, and a lot of internalized self-blame that's unnecessary and inappropriate, and leaves people feeling disenfranchised on a, I think, emotional level. Did I answer both of your questions?
You did. You wrapped the second one into the first one. And thank you for that, because I think that we would be doing our listeners a disservice if we didn't really talk about that in relation to this term. Because I think that we struggle still to define what it means to be a Black man. Mm-hmm. I remember telling you the conversation where I was in France a couple of weeks ago, and the lady at the front desk said, "Where are you from?" She said, "You speak French like you're from Britain, but you don't speak English like you're from Britain." She said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "I'm actually African American." And she said, "Oh, which part of Africa are you from?"
Mm-hmm. Played yourself.
And I said, no part of Africa. I'm actually born in America. And she says, oh, so you're American. And I'm like, it's real refreshing. I don't really hear that in my own country. I got to be an African American here.
Right.
So I think that we, in this country especially, like, hold on to these old remnants of slavery, and we've just sort of morphed them in our sort of reclaiming the power struggle. But we don't necessarily need to do that. We really can define ourselves in a new way. And I think that Black Boy Joy is one of the many things that's doing that currently. And I applaud it.
Absolutely. You know, I think, I don't know, people were all up in arms about the whole romper situation. And I was like, these pictures of these men got some thick thighs and some real nice muscular calves. I'm okay with that.
You better hold on now. You're doing that Doopy Deep After Dark. That's coming in the fall.
That's coming in the fall.
That's coming in the fall.
I'm gonna keep it there. Rated G.
That's right. We're PG. Daytime. That's that 10 o'clock show.
But
right
I'm just
there.
saying, you know.
Woo.
So I'm looking at the time, and I know we need to start wrapping up.
Yeah,
and I
we
guess
got
the
about
one
3
thing
minutes
that I would
left
like
today.
put in as we move forward from this conversation, what I'd like people to take away from this is, I know when I am feeling uncomfortable about something, that's a place that I want to spend a little bit of time reflecting on, because it usually means I'm bumping up against something that I've accepted as fact or truth, that I'm now seeing something out in the world that is challenging that. And so, you know, for folks that even, if you saw the film Moonlight, if you see Jaden Smith on the cover of a fashion magazine in a skirt, if the guileless expression of Black Boy Joy and men smiling and men being in joyfulness with other Black men out and about makes you uncomfortable, it probably means that some internalized stereotypes that you have are being challenged. And so the issue isn't whether you need to be comfortable with another person's expression of Black Boy Joy. The issue is, do you think you have a right to determine what someone else's Black Boy Joy is? And I think if it's that the case, then that's probably a piece that needs to be challenged a little bit and re-examined.
Dr. Coleman, you have brought much Black Boy Joy to my life, as I am confident I brought some Black Girl Magic to you. Let's talk about what we're doing next week. What's next week's show about for our listeners?
So unfortunately, guys, next week is our last episode for the summer, but don't you worry, we'll be back in the fall. I know, we'll be back in the fall. What we're doing now is we're going to for sure be ramping up to 1 hour shows, because when we come back in the fall, we want to have guests join us and kind of round out the conversation. And we want to do a lot more fun things when we come back in the fall. But our last show is next week, and we're going to talk about hashtag relationship goals. I want to talk about Black relationships. You know, everybody wants to talk about, or not everybody, but the white mainstream always wants to talk about Black on Black crime and Black on Black violence. Well, we want to talk about Black on Black love. And our final episode for this summer. We are going to keep it rated PG, but coming up in the fall, we're actually going to be having some episodes that I'm excited about that will be Doopy Deep After Dark, where we won't need to keep it rated PG. We're going to go straight rated NC-17. I don't know if Tomas is ready for that for sure.
I am not.
And everyone will join in my joy in having his discomfort at that. But we will see you next week, July 21st, 2017, for our final summer episode for Doopy Deep with Dr. Nikki. Until then, you all be well. You take care. Take a moment to take care of yourself, because remember, it in itself is an act of political warfare. Have a great weekend.